Hey everyone. Okay, so yesterday I jumped in here and I was talking to you guys about what the difference is between being a sugar burner versus a fat burner. And I'm not going to go into everything that I talked about in that part. I will quickly review the two, but if you really want to know, you can go back on my page above or below this video and you can see yesterday's episode where I talked more specifically about sugar burner versus fat burner. But basically, just to recap, if you are a sugar burner, that means your body is addicted to sugar. That means that you are fueling your body on lots of sugary foods and carbs, and that's pretty much how you're surviving. And it is a true addiction. So when people say they are addicted to carbs or addicted to sugar, it's true. You really, really are. Your body is wired that way to be addicted to it. And the difference is a fat burner, and a fat burner is somebody whose body is actually burning fat and not dependent on sugar. It is somebody that is eating a diet that is higher in healthy fats and proteins, and the body is breaking it down appropriately. So that's the difference between the two in a very short version. Like I said, you can go back and watch my video yesterday if you want to know a little bit more about that. Today, though, I want to talk about the difference between the two and what happens in terms of inside your body, because I truly, truly believe that knowledge is power, and that when you have the knowledge and understand what's happening in your body, it makes you better able to choose to eat the foods that are going to be better for you. I do have some notes, so if I'm looking off to the side, that's what I'm looking at, because I want to make sure that I don't say anything incorrectly and that I also don't miss anything. So, my job is just to learn and share with you what I'm learning. So I'm not an expert by any means, but I am spending some time studying this and I want to share with you what I'm learning. I want to talk specifically for a minute about type 2 diabetes, because it is truly an epidemic in our country, and it is completely determined by the diet that we eat in our country. And so it is something that our ancestors did not deal with, because they did not eat the way that we eat. They didn't have the things that we have. So type 2 diabetes has become an epidemic because of the particular diet that we eat. And it's a shame, but that is a situation we are in, but it doesn't have to stay that way. So I want to share with you a couple quick things about this. When you eat food, your body digests what are called macronutrients. And macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Those are your macronutrients. And your body digests those when you eat. Anything that it can't digest, like, for example, alcohol, fiber, any other kind of toxin, those things pass right on through, or they get put into your bloodstream. And then once it gets into your bloodstream, it gets filtered by your liver. So that's when your liver gets involved. And that's basically, in essence, what happens to any food we eat. And so what happens is, and I talked about this yesterday in my video, is things that are sugary foods or carbohydrates, which are turned into sugar inside our body, which would include bread, pasta, cereal, rice. It would also include desserts, pop. It would include anything that you eat or drink that's a carb or sugar. Those end up as glucose in your body. And what ends up happening is glucose is used as fuel, particularly when it comes from natural sources like fruits. It's used as fuel in your body. But if you have too much of it, it becomes toxic in your system, and that's where we get into trouble. And it becomes a toxin, and unless it's being burned in your cells, your body has to figure out a way to get it out of the body and get it out of the bloodstream very quickly. And so by doing this, that's when your liver gets involved, and your liver and those muscles store some of that excess glucose that you have as something called glycogen. And that is what fuels your muscles. That is what sends signals to your pancreas whether or not you need insulin, and all of that is related together. And I'm not getting into the super scientific side of this. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of basis in the background. So insulin is the hormone that you have in your body, and its main job is to allow glucose and also fats and amino acids to get into your muscles, to get into the muscle and liver cells. But when those cells get too full, Okay, when they have all that they need, then, and that happens a lot when people are inactive. If you don't exercise or do any form of movement, that happens a lot. Then that glucose is what gets converted into fat, specifically saturated fat. So that's where the trouble becomes. When you have a combination of people that are eating a high carb, high sugar diet, and somebody also that's not exercising in any way, what ends up happening is all that excess glucose that your body doesn't know what to do with because the cells are full and don't need it anymore, it converts it into fat, and your body stores that fat. Now, that constant call for insulin, because insulin's job is to take care of that. And so that constant call for insulin happens every single time you eat sugar or carbs. It spikes your insulin level because your body shoots out insulin, and then you feel that drop, and that's usually when your energy level drops, and then you grab for something that is sugary or has carbs. You get that quick burst of energy, and then your body calls for insulin, and then you get that drop again, and it's a cycle. It's a yo-yo cycle, and that's what's happening. And eventually what happens is when you do that for so long, your body becomes like you develop like a insensitivity to that insulin. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do anymore. It doesn't do the job that it's supposed to do to begin with. And so when that happens, people start to have trouble, and that's when you get people that are pre-diabetic because their body is starting to become insensitive to that call for insulin because it's happening too often. And so their blood glucose stays higher because it's not working. The insulin isn't able to get the glucose into the muscle cells. People will say that they feel like they're losing muscle definition in addition to being hungry all the time, in addition to feeling those energy crashes all the time. And that is the beginning of those type 2 diabetes, those pre-diabetic stage that many people fall into. They also are storing fat because their body has too much of it, that excess, so they're starting to gain weight in addition to all that, and it becomes that vicious cycle. You become resistant, I guess is probably a better word than insensitive. You become resistant to that insulin, and you can't get it into those muscle cells. You also can't get those amino acids into the muscle cells, so you can't build your muscle or sustain any muscle. Even if you are exercising, people will say, well, I'm exercising like crazy and I don't feel like I'm getting any strong, or I'm not gaining any muscle. I'm not able to tone anymore, but I'm working out like crazy. Well, it's because their diet is too high in carbs and sugar, and their body can't do what it needs to do properly with it. They have an excess. They have that toxicity in their body. It also does affect your thyroid. I've talked about this in previous videos about how one of the job of your when your liver becomes insulin resistant, it doesn't convert the thyroid hormone T4 into T3, and that's one of the jobs of your thyroid, and that's when you get those crazy T4, T3 levels. And so all of these things are tied together. And so you are truly a sugar burner, but it's really not your fault because we have this diet surrounding us in our country that is so carb heavy. We've been told that we should be eating a lot of carbs, when in truth, really, your diet should be made up of mostly fresh vegetables. That should be that bottom of that pyramid, fresh vegetables, and it should come from healthy fats. Fat is a funny word because we hear fat, we think negative, but there's healthy fats that are essential to our body. And that comes from good meats, it comes from fish, it comes from eggs, it comes from things like avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, nuts, seeds. Those need to be that, and vegetables need to be the main part of our diet. That is what we need to change our thinking in, because once we start to introduce those foods back into our diet and make that be the focus, then it helps us get away from the sugar, it helps us get away from the carbs, and it allows our body to burn fat the way it's supposed to, which gives us the energy. You're getting energy from those sources of those healthy fats and proteins and vegetables. So I will come back here tomorrow and I'm going to talk specifically about what would be an example of good foods that you could be eating, and how do you transfer yourself from being a sugar burner into a fat burner? How do you transition your life so that you're not a sugar burner anymore, but you're becoming a fat burner, because I mentioned it yesterday. You can't just all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to quit sugar, I'm going to quit carbs. They're addicting, and it's a process. So tomorrow, now that you understand what a fat burner is and what a sugar burner is, and you understand a little bit about what happens inside our body and why things like type 2 diabetes are so prevalent, you understand a little bit about what's happening on a very minuscule level, because like I said, I'm not getting super scientific with you because I don't want to say anything wrong, and I also don't want to inundate you with the science behind it. If that's something you're interested in, I have many resources I can give you to look up that stuff. But what I really want to do is help teach you how you can start to change your diet. What are some small changes that you can make in your diet today, tomorrow, that start to transition yourself from a sugar burner to a fat burner. So that is what we will be talking about specifically tomorrow. And if you have questions about any of this so far, please feel free to post below this video or send me a message, and I will do my best to get back to you and give you whatever information I can or point you in the right direction. So thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you below if this was helpful. It helps me know if I'm on the right track with what I'm providing. So I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you soon.